Had a huge storm push through here last night. It was pretty significant. Although it's still pretty hot today. The thermometer in the greenhouse is 100 degrees. I don't think it's near as hot. It doesn't feel as hot. It may get hotter later. There's a breeze after that storm, so I'm glad it's getting better. It's supposed to cool off tomorrow, and I think it's going to stay pretty cool. I think there's a day where it gets up to 97, but I don't know if it's going to be as humid. It doesn't seem like it. It's been a pretty mild year so far. So I've been talking to you about preppers versus off-gridders and SHTF, stuff that hits the fan. End of the world, zombie apocalypse. And I've been trying to explain that I feel like what we do as an off-gridder is much better prepared than preppers. And yesterday I actually read to you the definition of preppers. I don't feel like I'm a prepper because we don't actually stockpile. Stockpile is the big thing about prepping. We consume what we make, and we don't have to rely on anybody. So I don't see much of a difference between living off-grid now and living off-grid in a SHTF. Of course, there's going to be some things that we have to consider, security, and I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, we've even gotten to the point where we're feeding our chickens homemade stuff. I showed you in the past that Carolyn's putting sunflower seeds in a bottle. She waters them and it grows up. She can turn 50 pounds of sunflower seeds into 100 pounds, or actually 250 pounds. And she feeds that to the chickens. That's protein, 23% protein. Now, somebody mentioned, well, you still use propane. And I've talked about this so many times, propane. Yeah, we use propane for the stove here. We got a generator that uses propane, a water heater uses propane. But when you really think about it, we don't have to use propane. We have this wood stove down here we can do all our cooking on, and I don't know why we're not catching on to this. But that person said it just takes too long to get that thing going each day. Well, I don't even know how that makes sense. So we're in an SHTF, the end of the world, you have no electric, and you're worried about me starting a fire. How is it that a prepper is going to be better prepared? Now, the other thing you have to remember is our food is canned. We canned all our food. You can eat that right out of the jar. You don't have to cook it. Of course, it's cold and it'll have grease in it. It wouldn't be the best texture, I suppose, but you could eat it. One of the things that people seem to think that I don't have a handle on because I don't talk about it, and I probably won't talk about it very much, I will in this video, is security. I feel like that we actually have security pretty well handled. We don't have a lot of property. That's one of the things that I've said about having a small piece of property is you don't have a lot to watch. I can see one end of the property. We've got an acre and a half. I can see one end of the property from the house, and the house comes up to the other end right over here. Then we have the woods. Now, I will admit, in the summertime, it's hard to monitor what's going on in the woods, but it doesn't really matter what's going on in the woods. We may have trespassers out there, but it's not like they're going to steal anything. Or they would get a little closer if they could navigate through the woods to get to the house, but there's still a good little distance before they actually got to the house or got to the chickens without me noticing. One of the things that I have is we have an alarm system, and it's a very cheap alarm system. We bought these little buzzers that go off and it lights up, and we put it down there by the chickens. And I've actually caught people on the property with this. It's not like it's something that I haven't tried. It is something that I've tried. It went off one night, and I walked down there because I was thinking it was probably wildlife, and I'm trying to keep the wildlife away from the chickens. And yesterday I talked about bears, and before I get too further, I want to thank a viewer who said, and I don't have a permission to use her name, but she suggested instead of buying an electric fence that we put nail boards down. And so I looked this up, and there are actual national forest government officials, maybe state officials, I don't know, who suggest using nail boards to keep bears out of your whatever. And what you do is you put a 4x4 piece of plywood down on the ground with nails sticking out every 2 inches apart, and they'll put their weight on that and they'll realize, no, we don't want to step on that. And so that keeps them away from whatever. So Carolyn and I were thinking that we could use that idea around the chicken coop that keep bears out of the chicken coop. Of course, plywood is pretty expensive, so we thought maybe we could find some pallets and do the same thing. We've talked about the electric fence, and if we can do the nail boards cheaper. Now, today I was looking up a better security system, actually, and I think I'm seriously considering buying this. The only downfall is is one device. Let me explain it. So it has 2 sensors that you can put in a half a mile away from your receiver. So you put these sensors out there. Well, of course, I put them by the chickens and down by the garden. Now, by the wood pile, a lot of people seem to think that people are going to steal the wood pile, but the wood pile is right by the house. Imagine backing your truck up. Of course, they'd have to get past our truck. Backing your truck up right next to our house and start loading their truck up with firewood while I'm in the house. Doesn't seem very logical. So no, I don't think firewood's a big deal. So the squeaker, I was able to chase people off. Well, now if we had this sensor and it sent a signal to a device in the house, it's a receiver, then we'd hear it definitely. I could even wear my earplugs at night and I would hear it. The only downside is that you have to plug it in the wall. So there's 2 downsides to that. One, we have modified sine wave, so it's not true 60 hertz, and I don't know if I need 60 hertz for that thing. Usually these little electronic devices are DC, so it actually gets converted from AC to DC. So if it's DC, it would work. It's $30. I thought I'd give it a try. And if I have to, I could just break down and buy a true sine wave inverter. They're not that expensive anymore. The only reason I didn't buy them in the past was because they were so expensive. So now that would give me an early warning system. So getting back to SHTF, one of the videos I made, I was talking about police officers. Here, it would take a police officer 30 minutes to get here. They do not patrol this area at all. I probably can count on one hand how many times, maybe 2 hands, how many times I've seen the police around this area. The sheriff has pulled up in front of my house. Now, he lives down the road. I've talked to you about that last year, but I haven't talked to him since. So it's not like they patrol the area. He just was driving through to go home and coming back to work. He stopped by and talked to me. Long story, I don't want to get into it again. And then there was a police officer a while back that was dealing with a crook. I talked to you about that. The crook ran off into the ditch. They arrested that person. But that was a chase. That was a high-speed chase. So they're just not here. So I'm responsible for my own security here. And I prefer it that way. I really do. Because it takes police some time to get here. By the time the crime is done, the police would show up and start taking the police report. That's the only thing they could do. So I'm really proud of the system I already have in place, and I'm going to modify it so the sound is actually better. I can hear the security thing going off in the house. Somebody, and I get this a lot, said I need to get a dog. A lot of people tell me I need to get a dog. Well, there's just so many downsides to that. Now, I recognize people love their dogs. Don't get me wrong. I had dogs in my life, and I love dogs. Right now, we have a little cat that has strayed over here. It hasn't left the back porch. Right now, it's underneath the house, sleeping during the day. At night, it comes up, gets on the porch, we feed it. It stays awake about 10 a.m. and then goes back underneath the porch. We've already gotten into a routine. This winter, I'm going to see if maybe she'll want to come into the house. So we have this cat, but already we're having to figure out how to feed it. Fortunately, the cat doesn't eat a lot of food. We can give it an egg. That's pretty good. We could actually give it some of our canned stock food, you know, the food that we canned up last year. We got 300 days worth of food, but it would take a cat 4 days to eat one jar of that. So we could feed a cat in an SHTF situation. But when we're talking about dogs, that becomes much more difficult. Now, I get it. Dogs are great companions. Dogs will bark if there's somebody outside. But how are you going to feed a dog in an SHTF? Right now, humane societies are filling up with dogs. Carolyn just read a police report or something that there was a little poodle tied up to a stop sign without a collar on it. I guess because somebody just couldn't take care of it anymore, couldn't feed it, so they tied it outside on a stop sign hoping somebody would pick it up. Even though we're not in an SHTF situation right now, people already were getting rid of their dogs. I think it would be a really bad time for me to actually get a dog. Now, if I already had a dog, don't get me wrong, I would take care of it the best I could as a child. But I don't have that responsibility, and I think it would be irresponsible to actually take up that responsibility right in the middle of an economic crisis. The other downside to having a dog, of course you'd want a big dog, is it would have to be outside. Like I said, I want to take the cat inside. The dog would have to be outside because we have a tiny house. So what kind of life is that? I've never thought it was a good idea to have a dog outside. My grandma had a dog named Pig, and it sat out at the front porch. As soon as the door would open, it would jump up and run off and come back. I always felt bad for that dog. It just laid there all day long in front of the front porch. Taking into consideration that a dog you would have to feed for 9, 10, 15 years. I don't know how much dog food is. Let's say it's, I don't know, $30 a bag. I don't know what it is. And they go through a bag every month or so. It wouldn't take long before all of a sudden you're up to the cost of my little squealer at $30, right? And the squealer does the same job that I would need a dog to do. The thing about the squealer is I never have to feed it. It keeps doing this job. Now, I know that somebody said yesterday that they knew that I would think it wasn't cost effective to have a dog, but it's a great companion. Well, again, the dog couldn't come inside because we have a tiny house. So it wouldn't be a great companion. It would be a miserable existence for the dog. But the thing I don't think I convey well enough is Carolyn and I have an amazing relationship. She's my companion. I enjoy having her around. I don't need much more. I don't need friends, and I don't need a bunch of people to go drinking with. I mean, I don't drink. I'm quite content just with Carolyn as my companion. The chickens are down there. That's pretty good. I can go down, take care of the chickens, and talk to them for a minute. And now we got a cat that hopefully the cat will come inside. But if it doesn't, if it decides it wants to stay outside, it comes up every night, and I sit out here and I pet it, and feed it. Carolyn feeds it in the morning, she pets it in the morning. I think we got it all covered. We got the security, we got companionship, we got food, and we got a way to cook our food. I'm not sure what more it is that we need to survive an SHTF. So if you can just click that super thanks button down there, I'd really appreciate it. So if I can inspire you to find companionship while you're living your dream. Thanks for watching.